All right, you guys. So first off, I just wanted to start this video and say that a lot of people have been sending me messages on social media asking me if I still work at the dealership, asking me if they know that I left the dealership, why I left the dealership. So the first thing I want to say is this video is not made to be mean or critical. I just wanted to express my feelings and give those reasons as to why I left the dealership. Disclaimer here, I'm still a huge Harley Davidson supporter. I only ride Harley Davidsons. I appreciate all other motorcycles, but to me, Harley Davidsons are the motorcycles I choose to ride. So let's get into the first dealership that I worked at where I had a sales position. Now, the sales position is very limited work. You're not stressing your body, you're sitting down a lot, you're making a lot of phone calls, you're just genuinely meeting and talking to a lot of people and trying to find out what their needs are. This was very fun. I enjoyed it highly, but there were a couple caveats there. When I first got hired at the dealership, I expressed that I was in a position at the time to where I wasn't 100% doing the job for the paycheck. So over the course of 2 years previous to that, I was able to make myself financially secure to where I wasn't really hurting if I stepped down from my laborer's position. For 8.5 years, I worked for one of the largest paving companies in Western Pennsylvania. What I ended up doing was deciding that I would take a small break from road construction and I would try my hand at an industry that I loved, that I had passion for. So once I was hired into Harley Davidson, when I got into sales, it was a change of pace, to say the least. A lot of my time was spent making cold calls from a list that they had in the office, trying to get people to come in and set up appointments to look at the new bikes. The problem with that was that we were required to hit specific numbers. So you were paid $15 an hour, which in this economy, $15 an hour you could get working at most fast food places. So that was an automatic blow to the ego, but to do something you love, you'll make those sacrifices. So I didn't really have an issue with how much I was getting paid hourly. It became an issue with bonuses and incentives that were often offered and very sparsely earned. So one of the driving factors in sales was spiff money. So anybody who works in sales will tell you that a huge part of the process is spiff money. If you get somebody to sit on a bike that may have been sitting there for a long time or may not be as desirable, you can earn spiff money. So they have a system set up where they would have different markings on the bike that would indicate the status of it needing to go faster. If you got somebody to sit on those bikes and talk numbers, you would automatically get $100 cash that day. When I started, that's what they told me. Within a couple weeks of me being on the floor, I was very good at listening to a customer and getting them on a bike that fit their needs, but I was also good at sitting them on bikes that were high value bikes. So they were spending less money and they were getting more benefit from that motorcycle. It just so happened that those motorcycles were marked and I was supposed to receive spiff money from those motorcycles. Shortly after they seen that I was able to get a lot of people to sit on those motorcycles and my job was complete at that point. So the dealership I worked at, every single one of them is structured differently. But the one that I worked at, your only job in sales as a fit specialist was to get that person comfortable, find out their needs, sit them down on the motorcycle, talk to them, find out where they're at, and then when it's time to do the deal, you pass them off to a sales manager who will close the deal. I sat down quite a few people on those bikes that were supposed to be automatic spiff money. They decided they weren't paying $100 per spiff that day. They were changing it to, they needed an entire month to try to close that deal that you had already orchestrated. So what ended up happening was they changed their pay structure on the fly to benefit them, which was all right. If the bike sold, you still get a set amount of money. So also the way this dealership worked was you did not get commission off of every motorcycle you sold. You were only getting a small amount of money per unit that you sold. Now, they took your $15 per hour that you were making and they set that as your base. You had to cover your base amount that they already paid you before you would even get any of the money from selling that bike. So let's say the base amount of money they paid you was $1,800. You would have to sell X amount of numbers to hit your $1,800 they paid you that month. Then you would start earning money. So the way that it was structured sounded very enticing, that you would be able to make a lot of profit. The bad part was when I hit the floor, there were 8 other people on the floor selling bikes in February. So as you know, motorcycles don't move units in February. Very hard to move units when they can't ride the motorcycle home. I was still selling CVOs. That was my cash cow. I would move bigger units because you could tell those people wanted the motorcycle. They were there for a reason, and it wasn't that they were working with a budget. They knew what they wanted when they came in, so it was easier to deal with. So I got pretty comfortable moving more expensive motorcycles, and it came very easy to me. The problem was that as you would get closer to the end of the month and it was time for you to hit your spiff money, a lot of those incentives would be taken away from you. So I was owed $400 in spiff money one time, and I came into work and it was not on my check, and I asked a question and they said, yeah, we decided we're not doing that anymore. So it was very ignorant the way that it was done, like playing with people's money after there was already an agreement in effect, and then changing the pay structure 2 to 3 times within a 3-month period of time and making people sign off on it. So it was very disheartening to see that even though I was putting the effort in and I was moving units, every time I was close to compensation, they would remove it from the table. That was the biggest reason why I left. Another main reason why I wanted to get out of the dealership, a lot of the people that work in the dealership are not passionate about Harley Davidson. It is not a driving force in their life. Some of them that I got to meet would even tell you they would never own a Harley Davidson if their life depended on it. They were riding Hondas to work. They were riding different motorcycles, which is fine. I have nothing against that. But to me, it was kind of disheartening to see that they didn't stand behind the brand as much as I do. There's not too many things in this world from a materialistic aspect that I would acquire and assume to my lifestyle. It's kind of hard for me to describe that, but there's only one brand or symbol that stands for a corporation or a company that I would ever tattoo onto my flesh, and that's the Harley Davidson bar and shield. It's a defining characteristic of my lifestyle, and that's why I got into the dealership in the first place, was to share that passion with other people and to help get them on the bikes that fuel my passion to get out and enjoy life. So that was very disheartening. Also, the fact that a lot of people in there didn't even ride motorcycles. It was very weird to me because since I was very much on my motorcycle and I rode a lot, that other people in the sales department that did not ride motorcycles would work with a customer all day long, and then they would come up and ask you to take them on a test ride because they didn't ride motorcycles. And you would have to take time out of your day and what you were doing while you were trying to make money for your family to go take a test ride with this person so that they could decide whether or not they wanted to purchase the motorcycle. Granted, it was not a requirement, it wasn't forced upon you, but it almost felt as if it was when they came up to you to ask you, because as a passionate Harley Davidson rider, if a customer is asking to go on a test ride with somebody, it's either because they're uncomfortable on the motorcycle, they don't know the area or the route, or they just want somebody else there to experience it with them, because riding with groups makes a huge difference and also increases that amount of passion and energy and enthusiasm that you get from riding. So that was something that kind of threw me for a loop. I figured that when I got into it, most motorcycle salesmen would ride a motorcycle. That was not the case. Also, they really pushed on not shopping with your wallet, but letting them make the decision. So there were tactics in place, emotional tactics that they would use. One of the ones I hated the most was when somebody sat down and they were looking at buying a motorcycle and they said, I need to talk to my wife first. I need to talk to my significant other or my partner first before I make this big financial decision. Mind you, motorcycles now are costing anywhere from $20 to $50, $60,000 for a brand new Harley Davidson. That's not like spending $5,000 where you could just dump it out of your account and you're good. A lot of these decisions need to be communicated and reflected with your partner, unless you're single or you're that guy who says, I do what I want. But we see how well that works out in the real world. I was always told to say things to them like, oh, so your wife wears the pants, or oh, you don't make your own decisions with your own money. Now, to me, if somebody says that to me in a dealership, it makes me want to get up and slap them across the face, because you don't know my situation and you don't know my lifestyle and you are insulting me. That is a blatant, flat out disrespectful insult to somebody, to challenge them and say that, oh, your wife must wear the pants, or I never had to ask mine. It's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. All those statements are set up as a way to coerce you into looking at the numbers and making a decision that day. The huge thing with Harley Davidson is if they sit down to run numbers and they don't make the decision that day, you lose like 60% chance that they're going to purchase that motorcycle if they don't take it that day. So it was very highly motivating for them to push you to say these things, and I'm not that guy. I'm never going to insult you. I'm never going to disrespect somebody, especially if I don't know you. So after I got out of the sales department, because it wasn't me who I am personally as a human being. I didn't feel comfortable doing that to people. I had to switch gears. I ended up getting a job at another local dealership that was a smaller dealership. They did things a lot differently, but when I went in there as a service writer. I decided I work on my own motorcycles, I build my own motorcycles. Now's the time for me to get in there and help these people that have motorcycles that have problems that need to get them fixed. One of the biggest issues I ran into was training. So I knew my engines. I've had Evo dynas. I've had twin cam dynas. I had an Evo Electroglide. I had a twin cam 96-inch Street Glide. Now I have an M8. I know those platforms fairly well because I build my own bikes. I do all the services myself. I'm very intimate with my motorcycle. I want to know what's going on with the bike. I don't want someone in there that I don't know doing stuff. That's just how I am. Same way with my vehicles. When I got in there, there's a lot of stuff in the industry that we don't know about. A lot of these motors have their own characteristics. The early 88 twin cams have chain tensioner issues. You have to inspect them chain tensioners at 20,000 miles. It's recommended to replace them before 40,000 miles to safeguard the longevity of your engine. A lot of people don't know stuff like that. Changing your neck bearings in the motorcycle, which services and mileages that's recommended. In the older model touring motorcycles, they had a Zerk fitting in the neck of the bike. You could hook a grease fitting up to it, and you can grease the neck of your bike. So your neck bearings lasted exorbitantly longer than the new ones, because that's one of the things Harley did away from, is they took that grease fitting out of the neck. So now you can't grease your neck bearing. So now they're saying, at 50,000 miles, you have to replace those neck bearings. You have to rebuild your front shocks. So there were all these different things at different intervals that I may not have known, because I never went by 50,000 miles, change your front neck bearings. I never went by that. What I went by was, all right, my bike feels weird when I'm turning. There's something going on. Let me jack it up, do a fall away test. All right, I could tell there's something wrong with my neck bearings. I tighten them up. Now they're sticking. Now it's time to replace them. So I always went by preventative maintenance based off the feel, because the bike's going to talk to you if you ride enough. So that was a huge hurdle for me. One of the main reasons why I got out of service writing was the amount of disrespect that customers would have towards you. I would get a lot of phone calls from guys that never changed their oil on their motorcycle in their life. They don't know how much PSI to run in their tires. And they would call you and they would berate you and say ignorant stuff to you when you would tell them how much a service cost, or how much it was going to cost to repair something on their motorcycle that they've owned for 20 years and have never properly serviced. We would get a lot of people in that would have rear wheels on their bike, and they would call in and ask how much it would cost to have a rear tire mounted and balanced. So you'd ask them the question, are you taking the wheel off and bringing it in as a carry-in? Are you going to ride the motorcycle in? They would say, oh, I'll take it off and I'll bring it in. You give them the price quote. They end up riding the motorcycle in 2 days later, and they go, oh, well, you quoted me at this price. And I go, that's for carrying the wheel in. So a lot of miscommunication, a lot of people trying to be very sneaky and con the dealerships out of money, because they view the dealership as a cash cow. When the normal Harley owner goes to the dealership, they assume that that dealership is seeing dollar signs every time they walk in the door. A lot of the stuff that we would get from customers would be, well, I spent $40,000 on this motorcycle. It's ignorant that you're now charging me all this money to replace my cam chain tensioner shoes. Then you explain to them the situation and why it's done, and then they even get more upset with you and say, if Harley knows that's a problem, why are they not doing it proactively? And that's the thing. You're riding around on a 20-year-old motorcycle. Harley Davidson is producing outstanding machinery now that is current. They're not going to go back and every single person that bought a twin cam 88 give them hydraulic chain tensioners in the cam. They're not going to do that. It would not be cost efficient. It would not be beneficial to the company to throw all that money out the window. Now, another thing that we ran into in service was that we would get people that would come in and buy a 1994 motorcycle off the floor and never have any experience with a motorcycle in their entire life. They would ride that bike, put 2,000-3,000 miles on it, come back in and complain because things are going wrong with the bike. First of all, it's a 1994. There's a lot of things you're going to have to do to that bike. Every winter, you should be going over that motorcycle with a fine-tooth comb and looking at future failures and points that may give you issues down the road. Checking your brakes, checking your brake fluid, going over the whole motorcycle. It is 30 years old at this point. So a lot of the time it was frustrating to me trying to explain this to people and then have them get upset with you for just explaining basic things to them. And I'm a very non-confrontational person. I try to avoid it, and I will even step back a couple times and then redirect the conversation in a different way to try to explain it to you. But it would be like you going out and buying a vintage Corvette and you put 3,000 miles on it and you blow a radiator hose. You can't go back to the person that you bought that off of and scream at them and tell them they should have changed the radiator hose because it was 30 years old, 40 years old. That is your due diligence that you need to do and do the research before you purchase the vehicle. So those were just a couple of the things that we got into. The second dealership I worked at paid very well. They included full benefits like health care for you and your family. It was done a lot different. I enjoyed that aspect. But what was happening to me was the passion that I have for the brand. I come home and I have the posters on my wall. Like, I have paintings. I commission people to do work on my bikes. It's a huge part of my life, and I'm very passionate about it. And I love the motorcycles, and I love the community, the industry, and I love riding. But working at the dealership and seeing the things that happened in the dealership, the way that people were treated and the situations I experienced, it was making me lose that passion that I had for motorcycles. And I decided at that point in my life, it was more beneficial for me to continue to have the passion that I have for motorcycles and to make a better living for my family. So I ended up going back to union work. I'm at a different company with a way better work schedule, so I'm going to be able to get you guys a ton of content up this year. But I just wanted to touch on that and let you guys know, when you go into that dealership, there's no need to be aggressive towards the people working there. Don't look at them as if they're making $1 million off you. Because the guy making $13 an hour at the parts counter, the guy making $17 an hour service writing you, the guy making $15 an hour trying to sell you that motorcycle, if they've been there for a while, they're there because they're passionate about the brand. They're not making a lot of money. They're doing this because they love doing it. The people that are there that are pushing you, that are very high intensity salespeople, don't talk to them. There's plenty of people there that are realistic, that are low key, that will listen to you, find out what you need. I can't tell you how many people's information I wrote down on a card and I kept it at my desk, and whenever I found something that was in their price range or I found something that I knew they were looking for, then I'd give them a call. I was required to call you 4 times a month, 6 times a year, you know, but it wasn't something that I did, and that's why it wasn't for me. I'm not going to call you unless I have something for you. I'm not going to hound you to get your money or to close a sale. I'm not that guy. You're an adult. You know what you're doing. I'm the same way. When I walked in the dealership to buy my bike, I walked in. I didn't argue anything. I counted out cash and I rode the bike home because I do my research before I go in. The people working there, 9 times out of 10, they're good people. They're trying to do the right thing for you. Just understand, when you go in there, they're very underpaid for the job that they're doing. So don't give them grief unless you have to. The dealership may be who you want to point the finger at because you're having an issue with the motorcycle. Just remember, Harley Davidson made the motorcycle. The guy who's working there at the counter is only trying to help you as best he can with what resources he has. He's not trying to screw you out of money, because I guarantee you he's not getting any of it. So those are a couple of the reasons why I left the dealership. There's also a lot of really great things about working for the dealership: the friends, the camaraderie, the passion that you have with the other people that you meet, and being able to ride motorcycles. But if you can't afford to ride a motorcycle, is it even worth doing it? So thank you guys for watching.